went fishing on the Mississippi.
Oh yeah, you won't be here Thursday, Friday.
We'll have to make it double good.
I'd settle for just having a good one.
Okay.
Welcome to Hedge Heads, where we discuss the commodity markets, news, and anything related to trading. Remember, risk of loss in trading commodity interest can be substantial. These are opinions only, not trading advice. There are no crystal balls. We don't know where the market's going, but we always have some ideas. I'm Ryan Tunkseth. He's John Prishman. Well, John, we've been talking hedging. We've been talking volatility. How does that relate to marketing?
We're headed right towards where implied volatility in grains goes up significantly, and I hear this daily. There's definitely two camps out there on marketing this year, two distinct camps. I would say the higher percentage is in something usually happens this time of year. I'll market when it goes higher. I've heard that 100 times. And then the other camp would be I think something could happen this summer, but just in case it doesn't, what can we do to protect this price that I might not like, but at least the upside's open? And the first one is the more popular one. It's free. You get to see what happens. And, when you look at history, you could argue it's on those guys' side. I mean, and that's what they're banking on. A lot of money, as a matter of fact. Like everything hinges on something happening. Although I'll still get sidetracked in conversations on a daily basis thinking we're talking about new crop, and they're actually talking about old crop, which would lead into why you need to worry about new crop. They still have a lot of old crop corn sitting around. So I'm thinking that they're talking about new crop, and no, in fact, there's still all these bushels around that need to come to market. So that should be your first warning sign that you need to think about marketing sooner rather than later on old crop and new crop. There's not a lot of good answers for the old crop, and I don't pretend that there is. Time's running out. It's not uncommon for guys to hold a portion into July to see what happens with the weather. That's not uncommon at all, but pretty uncommon to hold it past that weather window. Many years, they've been rewarded for doing that. You have flood in the Ohio Valley, I think 2017, 16, and then there was 2019, just planting delays galore. I think there was 19 million prevent plant acres that year. So you can have too wet this time of year. So it's not just too hot and dry. It's too wet can definitely factor in with plantings. Does that look like it's going to happen this year is a more important question. No. You don't know the weather, but it looks like everybody's just waiting for the date on the calendar. You don't see this too often. And it was, 2 weeks ago we were talking about the drought the great drought of 2024. Well, that ended in about a week and a half. Of course, it didn't break everywhere, but everybody got a nice rain. And as a matter of fact, it put plantings behind. And I talked to some guys in the Ohio Valley, and they have had enough rain for now. Right after they get planted, I'm sure they're going to want more. But it shows you how quick this all changes in the springtime. And it did. Anywhere, even here, it was very dry here, and it's been very dry. It was dry last summer. It was dry in the fall. It was dry in the winter. And then we finally got a couple days of rain with some snow a week earlier. So we're getting recharged even here. So the focus is going to be plantings, and that is generally not a great time period for grains. So what is there to talk about? When the planters are rolling, there's not a lot of, what happens if it gets too hot and dry? This is just not a part of the discussion. It's just that's more of a June talk than it is in April and May. So now we have an April and a May gap that you have to worry about where we're going to need to see some good news. Not that we can't. We often do see good news, and it's usually exports or a story that we didn't expect. But once the planters start rolling, you need something to support these prices because it's just that weak spot where things are going good. You can't kill anything, and it's going in the ground, and there's not a lot to talk about. That's exactly where we're headed to very early this time of year, where if this is 2019, we'd be talking about the glacier that's sitting outside that has no chance of melting anytime soon, and we're going to be severely delayed. It's just not that kind of year. So that's where some of the volatility will come from. It looks like we're not going to have that this year. We don't know because it's what 2 or 3% planted in corn. Long ways to go. But the new forecast came out and it looks pretty promising, which would lead to probably weakness without some news. But you never know. It's commodity markets. And back to your, the season of implied volatility in marketing. And I believe I said it last time. This gets to be one of the most important time, if not the most important time of the year, in between today and June 19th, 20th, somewhere in there, for these prices being the best that you're going to see. Like, it could be much higher than what we're seeing today in this little time frame. It's a very, very volatile time frame. It's very short. It seems long, but next thing you know, it's going to be June, and that's when a lot of stuff's decided for corn. We obviously need to see pollination into July, but if we have a lot of moisture leading into that, then there's not a lot of worry. So we should see some volatility. I don't like how everybody, or the majority of the people I'm talking to, have no plan, and they don't like the prices. There's a lot of different reasons. There's a lot of different stuff going on, a lot of financial pressures, and it feels like that they're going to go out there and plant and just kind of forget about it and hope that volatility spike shows up. That's what I'm hearing anyways.
Well, there's certainly an argument to be made that it's hard to envision when you're sitting on the farm, hard to envision it getting worse. So by not doing anything, yep. you're not, at least not spending any money. It's free to not do anything to a certain extent. Although if you're storing bushels at the elevator, you're paying each month, right?
Yeah, and it's just the age-old argument on marketing, whether I should pursue it or I did it and I lost money on a put, or it just comes down to what fits your farm. I mean, it's never gonna hurt you to know more about the markets or your options on what you can do. Then you can choose to use those tools, whether it's here, whether it's at the elevator, whether it's the elevator programs. You want to know, your whole goal in better marketing is knowing what tool to use to your advantage, instead of having it their advantage. Like you say, paying for storage. Is there something else I can do where I got the grain sold, I don't have downside, and it costs less? And oftentimes there is. The last couple of years, or at least the last year, you could own a call from harvest on, and you wouldn't have the downside risk for less than you could just the payment on the storage. It was 2.5 cents a month, I think, for a call. Storing it didn't work, and buying a call didn't work, but it would have at least been cheaper. That's your goal, is to get better at knowing when to do stuff here, knowing the stuff to do at the elevator, knowing when to forward contract, knowing when to cash contract. And it's usually a mix of a number of different things that you're looking for. It's never 100% this or 100% that. You're looking to use the tools to your advantage. And that's where I think a lot of guys stumble. They don't even know where to begin. Or they have a very bad experience right off the bat where it's not what it was promised. Or they're shoved into some cookie cutter type newsletter recommendations where what worked for one farm certainly is not going to work for your farm. And I blame it on there being a lot of not great information out there, and a lot of trial and error, which can be costly. It's just a matter of being very careful and learning about it and then applying it. And when I see guys do that and genuinely put effort into it, the results are a lot better. Like, for instance, strategies right now I'm working on are exactly what I talked about. We have no idea what the summer weather holds. We don't really like this price, but the fundamentals aren't great either. There's a lot to worry about. So let's look for strategies that keep the upside open, don't cost a tremendous amount, and don't take away a lot from the bottom line necessarily. But if it does go up, we participate. If it goes down, we're protected. That's the kind of stuff. And then you're going to want to shift gears to a more aggressive once the crop's a little more known, or at least what it looks like. But this is a time of year, in my opinion, where I'm working hard on trying to leave the upside open, keeping that hope alive that we are going a lot higher. And like you said earlier, a lot of guys just find the path of least resistance the easiest. It's free to just do nothing and see what happens. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of people just land, just whether they feel like they should know a lot and they're just kind of ashamed they don't know it and they don't want to ask the questions, or they get hooked up with someone maybe that doesn't have their best interest in mind, or like I say, a cookie cutter type, one size fits all. Like there's a lot of bad experiences. There's no doubt. There's definitely fault on this side, but there is guys out there that will help you. You just have to find them. And my philosophy is that you learn a lot about it before you apply any of it. You don't just jump in, or you do it on a smaller scale, limited risk, and be very careful on that learning curve. And then once you're more comfortable with the markets, then start expanding what you're doing. Maybe you're always going to be in options. Maybe you always want limited risk on your farm, and that's what works. Maybe you're a guy that has no idea his yield could be anywhere from 5 to 150, and you don't have the luxury of doing a lot of hedge to arrives, and you have to do more on paper, and you're kind of forced into this. And I would argue North Dakota guys, South Dakota guys, with the dryness that they have, are maybe forced into learning about this a little more than maybe if you're in the Ohio Valley and you're right next to where the basis is great and there's a lot more leeway where you can be wrong and still be profitable. Or if you're west and you have 10-15 cent difference can make all the difference in profitability. You tend to learn things faster. So it's regional too, without a doubt. Here where we're at is a very interesting spot. They have a unique combination of traits around here. I can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe you can help me out. But I don't. I thought when I was gonna have an office here that I'd have traders in here, like in Bismarck where I used to be. There would be 3 or 4 guys that would come in every day, and I set up a trading room here, thinking that they were gonna flood in here and look for information, ask some questions. I had laptops, and they could sit there and enjoy the markets. No one really showed up. Actually, this is an area I guess they have it all figured out. I don't know. I haven't visited with too many guys in this area really at all, but there is a lot of farming, so it's a very regional thing where. I find guys a little more east are always looking for ideas, in a lot of different directions. They seem very inquisitive about the markets. North Dakota, I find that in as well. South Dakota is interesting, but it's just a very regional thing. It's a philosophy thing. But in my opinion, I don't know how a guy farms without at least the knowledge of how to do some of this stuff.
I think one of the big tricks is there's so many things you can do. There's so many ways you can protect your crop or protect your profit or look at hedging, however it is, that it's hard to know. And if your job isn't, if you're more concerned about getting a good crop out, right? That's why we need experts. But it also, from our side, depending on the person, but it's easy to armchair quarterback from sitting at our trade desk and saying, well, here's what you should have done, or here's what you could do and not. So I think that we try to bring that reality of the farm side of things too, but especially when you look on Twitter, or you look at trade newsletter, trade ideas that you brought up and things like that, like it's easy to say, oh, I would have sold this high. Why didn't anyone sell here when it was $7.50 corn or whatever? But the reality is that there's so many factors and so many ways you can do things that you need somebody to help you through that. And that's one of our goals, and what we're doing here is just to help people learn the different ideas or start talking about different ways of doing it. But it's hard to admit you don't know how to do something too.
Yeah, I want a guy to learn, to be very comfortable, to where he's checking in and we're talking, but he's very confident in what he's doing, and I've seen that plenty of times happen. Other guys, like you mentioned, they've had very good success not doing that, and again, that's going to be a regional thing. It's going to be a family thing. It's going to be. You can't know everybody's situation, but they're very comfortable in the cash markets, and they maybe have a knack for that. Maybe that's their specialty, is storage and cash markets. So you can't just say it all happens here at all. It definitely doesn't. They're going to be more rare than the common guy, but it's not going to hurt you to know what tools that you have available. And I feel a lot of people fall into that. They like the discounted information. They like the low fee a month stuff. They like the the free information, and it's just like you're gonna get what you pay for. I mean, that's what's gonna happen. It works that way in any business. So you can't, if you put little effort into it and a little money, you can expect what you would think you're gonna get out of it in any business. So that's part of the problem. Again, you also mentioned just the farming aspect. It's like there's a lot of that takes a tremendous amount of time to get that crop, better yield. And that's a whole nother, like, just complete different world, just getting that from seed to the yield that you have. But I still go back to what's the point of it all if you don't market it very well? And that's why I believe in it. I've seen it really help guys for sure. Once they learn about it, so you want to find that balance where you can check in with a guy that you trust. I know that you can because I have guys that do that. Family and farming is going to come first, but essentially you can check in 30 seconds a day, a minute a day, and get a lot of information. Like you said, it changes so fast. That's why I've always felt like if I had job security, that there's no possible way you can put this in a little box. I mean, from one day to the next, it can change drastically. And how you react with those changes and how you handle it really is what separates you from an average guy or an average marketer to a very good one. And the only way to get better is to see a lot of different cycles, see a lot of different weather patterns, and live it and go through it. And then you start seeing kind of the market for what it is, and a lot of fear and emotion. And it's just this transformation guys have. I see a lot of guys kind of see that it's going to be some work, and they're just not that interested in it. That's totally understandable. They would rather concentrate on the farming side. I've seen guys start, not really understand it, kind of grasp it, and then fully start grasping it a year or two later and then run with it. And that's really great to see, to where they're just completely confident. They don't even recognize themselves from 3 or 4 years ago in the markets and the way they market. And that's really what the goal is, just more knowledge and knowing what tools to apply when. And it doesn't help that everybody's trying to sell these guys something at all time, and they have the best marketing plan, or they have the best this or the best that. Again, you're going to want to really go in slow if you're not familiar with this stuff, and learn about it a lot before you apply it. I just can't say that enough. You really need to know what you're doing before you get involved.
And I think, yeah, there's ways to step into it, and there's easy marketing options, right, or easy hedging options that, let's try this. This is a limited risk. You can see how it works, and you talked about it earlier. Sometimes that can burn a guy the first year, or maybe you would have lost either way, storing it or marketing it, and it's important to understand that can happen, right?
Yeah.
That those are out there, but also that there are ways to hedge, and that we're here to show there's lots of different ways, and we also understand that the right way for one farm is way different than the right way for another farm.
Yeah, that's why I'm not a big newsletter guy, and not that they're bad, but I mean, you just cannot fit everybody into that box. Every single guy is a different personality. Last guy I talked to thinks nothing of shorting futures for hedges. Like, that's what he's done for many, many years. He's more comfortable in that than he is with options. Where the next guy wouldn't dream of doing that. He'd rather do that at the elevator, maybe a hedge to arrive. He's more comfortable in that realm, having them have the margin calls, and then maybe looking at options here. And then another guy just might want to know what the general outlook is, and maybe, just, is there anything I can do I got 20,000 bushels on my farm. What can I do if I think it's going to go down, but I want to see what the summer weather is? You just never know what you're going to get. It's all different, and everybody has a different personality, and they definitely have different finances. That's super important part of this. And the best success I've seen is when I talk with the guy that's going to market and the banker, and we all are on the exact same page before, like, the summer begins. It's all laid out. Here's what we want to do. Here's what we're working towards. Sometimes you don't get everything you want on. You might be averaging in, and then the last tier of orders don't get hit, but you have a nice average. And then you could have a 2020 where every tier gets hit, and then beyond where you wish you wouldn't have done that. And you hope over time that you're nimble enough to try to get, the best parts out of the market that you can. Though highs and lows are obviously going to be very hard. And even after you nail it and you get the marketing perfect, the exit strategy is probably the hardest part of everything, especially in options. It all seems so hard to be on the right side, and that's like half the battle. It's actually the exit tends to be, in my opinion, one of the hardest things in all of trading, not only for hedging, but knowing when to exit profitable trades, like in your regular spec account. It's something that at the beginning you don't worry about at all, but once you're in it for a while, that gets to be actually one of the harder parts of all of trading.
I 100% agree on the exit side. It's I mean, you're pretty much guaranteed that it's going to go the wrong way as soon as you exit, and then as soon as you don't exit, it's going to go the wrong way against you too.
I do find that if I do the right thing and cash in that $500 gain, it's the one that runs $3 every time, and then if you think it's going to run $3 and you can't miss, it's the one that takes it all back. Yeah, you just got to kind of get used to that and try to find a happy medium in there somewhere.
You and I joke about that all the time, but it's true. Limit orders, limit orders. It's sometimes the market's just going to keep going. You never get that limit filled, and you should have moved it up a cent, and you would have.
We're going to do a whole episode on what you just said, limit and market orders, and it's. I was taught by an older broker. He's still in the business. He said it to me a long time ago, and we'll have a whole episode devoted to it. It was limit orders only catch bad markets, and market orders catch good and bad markets. I didn't understand at all what he was saying. I thought he was nuts. And then I saw it applied, and again, we'll have an entire episode on this alone. It's actually one of the most important things I think out there. And it's something I've never heard talked about besides by that one guy, and it changed everything for me for sure.
Yeah, I learned my lesson. Was it last year, 2 years ago on the Minneapolis wheat? That I had a limit order in at 9.5 cents, and it sat at 10 cents for 3 days before it decided to go the other way.
Yeah, I put that one on you. Anybody using a limit order in Minneapolis wheat options and expecting a good deal, that ship sailed in 2008 when the volatility decimated that market. I do remember calling down to the Minneapolis floor, and there was one day in the middle of all that when wheat was absolutely going ballistic, that there was no bids and no offers on calls. There was just no market at all offered. And it was something else. I don't think I've ever seen that. And the market, honestly, has never recovered since that volatility spike, or the price spike. I mean, it was unheard of. I think in between the March and May contract, just the futures, I think there was a $6 price difference between the same crop years. Not 60 cents, $6. That's how that unless you live that, it's something that is really hard to describe what happened there. I sat and watched the whole thing. I'd like to say I was long wheat with Dewey or whoever that guy was that broker that bought all those contracts overnight, and then they liquidated them the next day. No, but I watched it. That was something else. That was a market that was only for the bravest.
We've seen some crazy things, though, even in the last couple of years. Oil going negative.
Cocoa now.
I mean...
Yeah, oil negative, that was another big one. Actually, they probably shouldn't let that happen. I do wish I would have had some storage in Cushing there. We would have made a killing. I watched that, and that was something else, too.
You and I were sitting here watching that. It's one of the craziest. I remember guys calling when oil was at a penny and asking if they should buy.
I had a guy had an order rejected because his account was not set up to buy oil contracts at the time, and or it was maybe just a margin issue. Anyway, it was good that it got rejected because I think he was trying to buy it near $1 and it ended up going negative 50 that day. And I don't remember where it closed, but it wouldn't have been good.
My memory, I going completely off memory after a couple of years, but I think it closed at $25 under or something like negative 25, which is just crazy.
Yeah, I would have bought all the oil I could have at negative 50 had I had the storage. I would have had it delivered. They would have paid me.
We could have put some tanks in the back of the building, John.
It's inspiring. Yeah. That would actually, I think the neighbors would appreciate if we had a couple big tanks back there.
Yeah, I'm sure they would have. I mean, I know they don't like people driving through the alley through there, so maybe if we put tanks in the way, it'd keep people from driving through. But we're kind of a long way from marketing at the moment, which is fine. That's why we're here. But are there any pitfalls of marketing, pitfalls or things that stand out to you? Like, I see this done wrong all the time, or this happens all the time. Then
super unrealistic expectations. Like you're just going to sign up for something that's going to solve all your issues. And if you do, and it works, then you're one of the lucky ones. It's certainly out there. Again, just be honest with what it's going to take. It's going to be a learning curve. And I tell everybody that starts. It's like this is a process for sure. There's no shortcut. And you need to learn a lot about it before you apply it. That's the super, super important part. Because if you have a bad experience right at the beginning, then you're not going to have a shot to learn. You're not going to want to do it, and you're not going to want to be a part of it. And it's a very important part of the whole process. And again, you're going to have guys that just have no interest whatsoever in the marketing side at all, and that's there's nothing wrong with that either. If it works for them on their farm not to have that to be a part of it, there's certainly big farms around here that do nothing on the marketing side that I'm aware of, and I know them personally. But they seem very successful. So it's not like you can't be successful without it. But you better be very good in a lot of other ways to make up for it. Where there's other philosophies, like my uncle, who's no longer with us. He was a commodity broker for many years. He wondered if you didn't just market a 1/12 of your crop, every month, that you wouldn't just beat everybody. And I don't have the statistics on it, but that's not the craziest idea I've ever heard either. That probably would have worked as well. So there's a lot of different philosophies. The biggest pitfall by far is, like I say, signing up for something free, some free information on the internet, or some low cost deal, and then having you going from 0 to 100 miles per hour, not knowing what you're doing. It just doesn't work. And if it does, you got lucky that one time, and it'll catch up with you. So knowledge, the lack of knowledge before you apply it is where I think the big mistakes are. And then there's going to be just a lot of bad information out there. Everybody's got their opinion, and there's going to be a lot of bad ones. And that's, you hope you don't run into too many bad ones before you find good ones. But that's a whole nother episode that we could talk about. And then of course everybody's, you look at their website and they all have the answer, and they all in the top 90%. But I find that emotions sometimes don't make marketing really easy. Margin calls don't make marketing easy, and that's why I go back to having the meeting with, if you're having some of your marketing financed, or if it's part of the bankers involved, having everybody on the same page seems to work really good. Communication, like good communication, because there can be margins when the banks know and they expect something can happen, and you're going to average in, and this is what we look, and this is what it's going to be, but we're going to be making in the bin. And the only risk you're really going to have is basis risk, which can be substantial. But as long as everybody understands what's going on right off the bat and everybody's on the same page, it seems to work really good. I mean, that's where I've seen the best experiences. And then others are just guys. There's other guys that, like I say, just aren't cut out for it. They don't want to learn. They don't need to learn, and they have their own thing going on, and more power to those guys. So it's just about getting to know where you fit in all that. And I feel like there's a really lack of good information that gets guys on good paths. But, in sales, that's kind of, in every business, it's hard to find the good stuff. You got to strive for finding a knowledgeable guy. Hopefully you can find a mentor that helps you through some of the beginning stages. And then ultimately, your goal is 2-3 years down the road, you're really comfortable with what you're doing. And that's nice to see when guys get there. It really is.
Yeah. I think the emotions, you brought up the emotions, that can be such a huge thing in you have this plan, you know what you're doing, you've decided on these numbers, and this is why I'm doing it because I believe this will happen,
Yep.
or this is my risk, and then you're at the coffee shop or you're talking to a guy at the elevator or the seed store or whatever, and they say something, and that one little comment, you let it influence you, and you let it change, and you go and change everything, and that's usually quickly downhill when you let those emotions come in or let somebody else's little comments come in. I see that a lot.
Analysis paralysis, that's another thing you got to really watch out for. Just continuing to read or listen to podcasts or the radio and just surfing for what you want to hear because of what you believe. So how do you get away from that? Just, use seasonals, look at the fund position, look at history. What does this usually do? Or ask, just simply ask, hey, I'm concerned about my hedge. It's starting to get warm and dry. Is there anything we can do to protect the upside? Adjust the hedge along the way. Like the banker's nervous. What can we do? Do we need to adjust this at all? And look and lay it all out there and see, hey, yeah, we can pick up $6 calls for 8 cents. That way we know we can tell the banker we're capped at a $6 risk. We're covered after that, but we have exposure from $5 to $6, and they can get that black and white number that they're looking for to work with. So just because you put on a hedge doesn't mean that can't be adjusted to fit better the changing market environments. And again, that goes back to why I don't worry about what I do. It's just like the markets change so fast all the time. It's simply a whole nother full-time job for a different person. And that's, me, hopefully, where I will do some of that footwork for you, or I've seen this is what we need to do, or, it's hard because every scenario is different. But you can just flat out be completely wrong in hedging and abandon hedges. And that I saw in 2020 where we had 3 billion bushel carryover in corn. You trusted the seasonals, you trusted the numbers, and then everything was not what it seems. Those times are extremely rare, but they do happen. And that really puts a sour taste in everybody's mouth for marketing, because what happens is you end up marketing at really low prices, and everybody else that didn't market is getting $6 and $7, and you wonder why I wasted all this time. So it's not all great stories. Like there's definitely 2020 sticks out with a lot of guys for a lot of different reasons. The USDA data, I mean, we're very dependent on that data to influence where the price goes, and then when it's nothing like what it shows on paper, that tends to rub guys the wrong way.
We can only plan with the information we have. And so working with a broker, working with someone who is keeping an eye on the market, you have a farm to operate, right? And so, like you said, spending that minute or a couple minutes to give you a call or whatever, read something is important, but that is why we're here. You're involved in it every day. We're watching the numbers all day.
Yep.
It's like watching paint dry some days.
Yeah.
But when the volatility comes in, we're prepared to offer ways to change up your plan too.
Yeah, that's where, like, I just got it right before we got on here. I was talking to one of my clients, and we're going to go over the soybean positions tomorrow and some feeder cattle positions. Like, they're older hedges, they're older things that we had on, and we're going to go over in the morning and adjust everything that we need to adjust. And this guy's a weather veteran. He's been in the markets many years. And it's just, we need to talk about that. It's time that we have that meeting. And then again, the next guy might just be beginning, and he has no idea what a soybean put or call is. It's just, you take phone call by phone call. I have clients that have been around forever. One of my favorite clients, it's been a few years that he's passed away. One of the better marketers that I've ever met. I think I talked to him 6 times a day on average, probably for 12 years, like every day. So it leaves a void when those kinds of guys aren't around anymore. But I do enjoy talking to guys in the conversations. I think that it's important to keep on talking about it because, like I say, it changes so fast, and you're gonna need somebody kind of in your corner helping you out a little bit. Or I think that you would.
Well, and I think that's another part is we have those conversations every day with people across the country.
Yep.
We're not just looking in our backyard. We've talked to people across many states, so we have an idea where they're at, what their crops are looking like, what their fields are looking like, what they're feeling in their area, and it's a much broader viewpoint of the whole crop versus what you and your neighbors are talking about at the coffee shop.
Oh, and I feel that's the payoff of being in the business for as long as I have, is that I do trust my network, whether they're on the commercial side of stuff or they're just in different regions, from here all the way to the East Coast. It's really nice to hear different regions talk about it, and you start to get a feel for the clusters. Like, North Dakota is a great example of that. You're going to have wheat problems every year. But when the calls start clustering and they're calling you, it's a really good indication that it is a lot worse than what they're letting on. And you just get this feel for what's out there. Corn was another great example of this. Talking to guys once they physically got in the field in August and September and started looking, you can really tell them by their tones what's out there. Just through a good network, it's really, I don't know what I would do without it. As a matter of fact, the one guy I was just mentioning, he had an extensive network on the ethanol side of stuff, and I miss that a lot. It was wonderful to hear all that. He had such a great contact list in his ethanol world that I was really up to speed on everything. But I really trust, I just feel like what I'm hearing a lot the last few years is really matched up with what the USDA's had on paper, except for the one exception is the wet, cool years. That's funny. That's where most of the big bull markets come from. 2009 and 2019, I can remember the best. Where the wet, cool, low test weight. You keep hearing that word enough in your network, and those are the years where a year and a half later, sure enough, that corn got blown through and it wasn't there. So I really enjoy that part of it. That's why I like, I'll talk to a guy in Ohio this morning. The next guy is in New York, and the next guy is in North Dakota or South Dakota. And it really gives you a great feel for what's happening out there. And it takes a long time to build that. And I do feel that it gives you a great advantage over other guys just looking at a computer screen, for sure.
Well, that's a lot on marketing. Tell me, I've been a little bored watching the markets this week and haven't made a trade for a while. Are there any markets that I should keep an eye on this week? There's some opportunities that jump out to you this week?
Well, the cattle news, of course. That's with the flu there. I can't even spit it out. It's caused a lot of volatility, and that's there's a lot of, it's triggered a lot of phone calls too, and there's not a lot of easy answers there. The cattle guys, unfortunately, have been through this kind of thing a few times, and there's a lot of money at risk. So that's where a lot of the focus is going to be. Hogs are interesting. It's got a lot of buying with the idea that people are going to move away from beef and into pork. That's a stretch, but the market, is trading that. So the meats were exciting this week. I'm going fishing in the Mississippi here later this week down in Red Wing, so I'm getting excited to go for that. I'm a little distracted by that, and of course cocoa. I don't know. This week has been quiet. There's nothing that stands out to me other than the livestock has triggered a lot of phone calls. Oh, gold and silver. A lot of guys kicking the tires on that too. The precious metals have really gotten a lot of people's attention. So much so my phone's rang 4 times in a row here in the last 10 seconds. There must be a hot trade I'm missing here.
It must be time to jump in on platinum. I know that's your favorite market.
I do like platinum a lot. That's if you want to talk about platinum, I'm your guy. I don't say that I know everything about platinum, but it's a market that I've turned a lot of people on. It's an interesting metal. It's an interesting price, and then you look at the other metals. But it's just I like the size of the contract. Maybe it's 50 ounces, and it's not too big and it's not too small, and it's just this forgotten thing that's kind of fallen through the cracks for really long. It's getting on like 8 years now, where it used to be kind of the pack leader. It's fallen behind, but it's got its own personality. I do like platinum, and then what else I really like is these micro contracts. Micro crude oil, micro Bitcoin, which I don't do any. We can do that anytime a guy wants, but it's like it gives you exposure to these markets you never had. Micro gold, they're coming up with these great contract sizes where maybe if you don't want to risk a lot and you want to learn about the market, you have those. So I've really gotten that's kind of been what I talked to a guy, like, did you know that they have a micro contract in this? And people seem really interested in this stuff. So that's one thing the CME's done really well is develop these new contract sizes. I think they really have a place in these markets for smaller hedgers or smaller speculators, So I don't know. I would say I'm thinking about fishing. It's been a long winter. I didn't ice fish. There was hardly any ice here. And I'm anxious. I hear the bite's hot. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of boats down there, but I'm anxious to get down there.
I brought my boat home from storage this weekend, and I'm ready to go get some crappies around here. I think we'll be doing that these next couple days too.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had a nice spring, and I feel like I need to get outside and not be on a podcast right now. I'm getting itchy.
I'm hopeful that since the crappies didn't get hammered all winter, because we had about 2 weeks of ice for ice fishing. I'm hoping the crappie bite will be good this spring.
You had to be a diehard to be out there this year. I mean, even the diehards, it was a tough year. Could not be a bigger fair weather ice fisherman. You have a TV with some sort of college game or a professional sports game, and maybe a beer, and you offer me to come. I mean, I'm showing up. I'm going to be there. But short of that, I'm not a big ice fisherman.
For me, I almost prefer ice fishing over fishing in the summer. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love being out on the lake, but I love taking my portable and going finding those holes on the ice. And I'll tell you what, this year I went 3 times and that was it.
Yeah, no, it's time to get out there and enjoy a nice spring. And spring plantings are going to be going full blast. I'd imagine my phones are not going to be ringing very, very much over the next couple of weeks.
No, I'm sure guys are getting busy, getting equipment ready, getting itchy to get into the fields.
The 500-row seeders are getting geared up.
That's right. Let's put it all in 2 days, right? I think we can go from 3% to 98% this week.
What are you, from 10 years ago? This is going to be a half-a-day deal for a lot of people.
Well, I haven't mentioned it yet this episode, but we do have an email address. We'd love to hear the topics you want us to talk about, anything we can address for you, or you want to give us feedback or tell us how much you love us or how much you hate us. It's hedgeheadspod@gmail.com. Again, it's hedgeheadspod@gmail.com. That's in the show notes also. John, how do they get a hold of you if they want to tell you all about their area?
218-731-1578.
Well, have a great fishing trip, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. I gotta go to the lake and get the minnows.